Hey guys, Toyin here with O4G Media, and in this video we're going to take a look at 4 tips to improve your lighting no matter what you shoot. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here and you want to leverage the power of video to amplify the message of your brand or business, then start by subscribing, hit that bell so you get notified whenever I post new content on this channel. Lighting is one of the key fundamental building blocks to creating a good quality video recording. How you light up your recording environment will determine the mood and emotion you're trying to portray in that recording. So the first tip is to use a large light source, not necessarily a bright one, because the larger the source, the softer the light it gives off. For example, if you're using the sun as your main source of light, particularly when you're filming indoors, I would recommend you position your camera right in front of the window. That way the light is on you. This will give you an even coverage of light over your face with little or no shadows. On the other hand, if you're filming later on in the day and there's no sunlight to light you up properly, then you would need to use artificial lighting like what I'm using right now. I'm using a Godox SL60 LED light with a softbox to create the large light source that I need in this environment. If I turn this off right now and I use a smaller light source, you can see how harsh that is. Yeah. So that is why it's important that if you're going to be using lighting like this, you get a larger light source. And that takes us to the next tip, which is positioning of the light. When we're talking about lighting position, we are referring to 3 things: the distance of the subject from the light, the axis of the light to the subject, and the angle of the light to the subject. Right now where I stand, I'm about an arm's length away from my light source. If I was to move back a few feet, my face isn't as lit as it were if I stood where I was before. So that's why it's important to determine the distance of the light to the subject, so that way you know how intense or how bright you need it to be before you start recording. The other thing to consider in terms of the position of the light is the axis in which it sits in reference to the camera. Right now I'm standing directly in front of the camera, but my light source is slightly to my left to give this effect that you're seeing right now. If I was to illustrate with a smaller light, what that gives you is, depending on where the light is, you will have a different look. When it comes to the angle of the light, you can try bringing the light really high and shining it down. Bear in mind you're going to get lots of shadows around your mouth and chin, and the opposite will be the effect if the light was way down. You might want to add a fill board or light to adjust how dark it gets. I'll cover that in a later video. So depending on the axis in which you put the light in reference to the camera, plus the angle in which it's hitting the subject, you will get different looks. Like I said earlier on, the emotion you're trying to convey in your video will influence the style of lighting you put up in that recording. The next tip is to use a backlight in addition to your main key light. Now, right now I'm using another LED light right in the top here to give a slight contrast. Using a backlight improves the look of your video as it separates you from your background, and it doesn't give that flat 2D look that you would get if it wasn't there in the first place. The 4th tip is to consider mixing colors in your lighting setup. I particularly like blue, so I have a couple of blue color gels on my LED light panels. Now, that's just my own preference. I mean, for you, you might like red, green, purple, depends. I've used quite a number of color gels in my production when it comes to client work. I had a client who wanted to launch a YouTube channel. Her brand colors were purple, white, and a bit of beige. With that in mind, I introduced a bit of purple light at an angle of about 90 degrees. That way you could see her outline. And also I put some LED lights in her cabinet just to bring a bit of light in the background. You can try different colors to see what works best for you in your given situation. So here's a question for you. What kind of lights do you currently use in your setup? Let me know in the comments below. If you use the tips I've just shared, you should be able to see some improvements in your video recording in terms of the lighting. But hold up, I hear you say. What if I don't have a large light source, or I don't have a softbox, or I don't have an LED light that's that powerful to give up that much light? I got you.
My man.
Now, there are several options you could use in terms of light that can still give you a decent amount of brightness and intensity that you need to get that good quality of light hitting you whilst you're recording. Depending on your recording scenario, especially if you're using a smartphone, I would recommend using one of these clip-on ring lights that you can put over your phone and then put that right in front of you and then make your recordings. Otherwise, you can have another option where you can use a larger ring light where you put your phone right in the middle of it, or a camera, depending on the ones you get. I'll leave a link in the description below for you to take a look at some of recommendations that I have in terms of ring lights. You can also use smaller LED lights like this or like this by placing them on light stands, not forgetting what we discussed in terms of the position of the light, the distance, the axis, and the angle, because all of those three combinations will give off a different look depending on how far, close, angle, or axis they're all placed when you're recording. Well, I hope this has been helpful to you, and I look forward to hearing from you as to how this has helped, changed, or improved your lighting setup when you're recording your videos. And until then, take care. God bless.